I'm opening in the class notes. So the last class we discussed about what is source code management tool. We discussed about what is source code management tool. We also discussed about Git architecture and how to install Git on Ubuntu, right? Today, let's see how you can create a remote repository. Okay. So we know end-to-end build and deployment workflow. So this is the dev team, development team. Here we have Git, right? This is our Git repository. So developers submit their code to Git. We take the code, we build the code, and then we deploy the code into Tomcat server, right? So this is Git server. And inside the Git, we need a repository, correct? In repository only, everybody commits the code, correct? Code sits here. And we know the architecture also. So this is the remote repository. Say, I'll call this remote repository name as vehicle team. Say, for example, Flipkart. So usually we use a project name for repository. This is our remote repository. So we know how users work with the remote repository, right? First, people clone the code. When people clone the code, they get .git. We call it the local repository. And we have source here, source area. And then we have staging area. Staging area, correct? Today, let's see how we create remote repository. That means, as a DevOps engineer, assume that you joined in a startup. There is no Git repository setup. For example, your manager comes to you and says, and asks you to create a remote repository. How do you create remote repository? That's a question. You can create remote repository in two ways. One, something called on-premise. What's it? On-premise. On-premise repository means you take your own machine. Assume that in our office, you take a computer, and then you can create a remote repository. Remote repository you can create in your own. This is your own machine, okay? This is your own setup. We call it the on-premise. The other option is cloud. I'll explain that. So that means as a DevOps engineer, you take a mission and then you install Git in this mission, and using Git, you create a remote repository. But most of the cases, we don't create remote repository in our own missions. We don't create remote repository in our own missions. Instead, usually what we do, we go to something called GitHub. What's that? GitHub. GitHub is a cloud solution. What's that? It's a cloud solution. Cloud means, see, this is a mission in our office. This is not your mission. This is a mission from a company called GitHub, for example. Think GitHub as a company, right? Instead of creating remote repository in our own mission, usually what we do, we go and then create a remote repository in GitHub. Why we go to GitHub? Usually, why can't we create remote repository in our own mission? See the challenges. If you create remote repository in your own mission, right, then you have to take a backup of this, right? Because we have the complete software code sitting in our repository, right? What if this repository, is down? Say, for example, due to some hardware failures, what if this mission, gets destroyed? So you will lose your code, right? So somebody has to take a backup. So you may need to have a separate system administrator, for scheduling the backup and, taking care of few things. You may need a separate network engineer. You may need a separate DevOps engineer to handle, all Git related things. You may need to buy some special hardware, right? So these are all the challenges we face. That is the reason, and it involves a lot of cost, and you need to manage a lot of. You need a lot of people to manage this, and this is a costly solution. That's the reason. Usually, we don't create remote repository on our own service because of this maintenance issues. Instead, what we do, we go to a company called GitHub. So GitHub is a cloud solution. Cloud solution means it's a kind of a service. Okay, means they say we will give you a mission, right? We will provide you a mission. Sorry, something is stuck. They say we will give you a mission. You create remote repository in our mission, and then we manage everything for you. That means you don't need to worry about the backup. You don't need to have a separate system administrator, network engineer, DevOps. You don't need to purchase special hardware and things like that. They say we manage everything, right? And then you create remote repository in our infrastructure. That means in their mission. So usually we create remote repository in GitHub mission. So it's called as a cloud service. Means they have something, you use the solution, and then you have to pay for what you use. And they say you just pay $7 per month, and then we will manage all these things for you. See, $7 is very cheap for the companies, right? So that is the reason we usually go and then create remote repository in GitHub. It's not only GitHub, okay? You can create remote repository in something called GitLab. There is something called Bitbucket. So they are all into the same business. What is their business? They will give you a mission. You can create remote repository in their mission, and then you need to pay for using those services. And it's very cheap. That is the reason, right? Instead of setting up the remote repository in our individual mission, that is on-premise, right? On-premise, you go to cloud. So we are going to create a remote repository in GitHub. See, it is not just managing the remote repository. GitHub is also an application. They will also give you an application to you. That means you can browse the repository in the browser. That means you can access the remote repository content in the browser, and then you can do a lot of things in graphical way. Instead of using a lot of or multiple commands, you just access the repository in the browser, and then you can do a lot of things in the browser itself. So it is very easy. That means very easily you can handle all Git related things. So what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Git is a source code management tool, the main source code management tool software it is. What is GitHub? GitHub is a cloud solution. So that GitHub is the place where we create a remote repository. It's a cloud solution, or you can also say GitHub is an application. Application means, see, you have 10,000 files. All 10,000 files you can see in the browser. And then there are a lot of activities, okay? You can get a remote repository here very easily. You can create something, there is something called branching, okay? You will understand that later. You can get branches very easily. You can do a lot of things very easily in the browser. See, now, if you create a repository in your own mission, you have to build this kind of applications, right? It's very difficult for you to build your own application. Because of all these reasons, usually companies go and then create remote repositories in GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket infrastructure. Then who prefers to have their own repository? Say, for example, you have some banking applications, right? And then say some finance application. You have your Aadhaar software, right? Where you go and then download, Aadhaar and things like that, right? So these applications are, very sensitive things, correct? What if, something happens with the, other software, right? The whole country's, database, is in Aadhaar, right? So these are all the sensitive applications. So usually these kind of companies don't prefer to create remote repositories in GitHub because you are storing code in somebody else's mission, right? That doesn't mean that it's not secure. It is secure only, but they don't want to take, that 0.0001% of chance. So using these kind of sensitive applications, when usually these kind of sensitive applications go and then create their own repository, but it's very rare. So let me explain how you create remote repository in GitHub. Understand the difference between on-premise and then GitHub. Any questions you have so far before I show you repository creation in GitHub? Any questions? Now, so you will see how easy it is, or how easily you can create, remote repository in GitHub. Let me open my Linux machine. Any questions you have in the meantime? Okay, let me open the browser. So I have given all the steps here. Okay. So if you want to create a remote repository, you follow some steps, okay? Creating a remote repository in GitHub. I've given all the steps here. Just follow me. And if you want to take some running notes, you can take. So whatever I'm showing you, I have given all the steps. After the class, you can keep these notes in front of you, and then you can practice it. So if you want to create a remote repository in GitHub, just open the browser. Just type github.com. github.com. Okay, github.com. So you are in GitHub. This is your GitHub, okay? So if you are a first-time user, you need to first sign up, okay? Create one user, sign up. You can give your email ID, password, okay? And you can also give the username and just say continue, and then it will send you one verification email. Just confirm, and then your user is ready. So I already have a user. So this is my user, okay? Nagesh VKM. So this is my password. I have a two-factor authentication. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. So I just logged in into github.com. Very simple, right? Just create one user, sign up, and then you log in with your user ID. Simple. Now you see how easily we can create a remote repository here. I have a lot of remote repositories. You can see on the left side, right? See, these are all my remote repositories. Gamut cart, Vaikalti 63, 61, 69, blah, 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 blah. See how many repositories I have. I usually create, different repository for different, batches. When you log in, you will see empty here. Okay. And now you have to create a remote repository, correct? This one in GitHub. We are in GitHub, right? We are in GitHub now. Think that you are in GitHub's machine, okay? If you want to create a remote repository, just click on new repository. Give some repository name here. I'll give something like Vaikalti 71. Usually we give the project name, something like Vaikalti or Flipkart and so on. So I have a repository with this name already. So just to make it unique, I am giving some number. Give some description, for your project. I'll say, faculty is DevOps and Cloud Learning Hub, something like that. And here you have two options. One is public, one is private. That means you can create a public repository or you can create private repository. What is the difference? If the repository is public, okay, anybody in the world can take the code. Anybody in the world can clone the repository, can see the code. Basically, without your permission, anybody can take, because it's a public. Usually, open source projects create public repository, but in real time, mostly we create private repositories. Private repository means without you giving access, nobody can clone the code. Nobody can see the code. Nobody can modify and then submit the code back to remote repository, because it's a private. So you have to provide access, and then we'll see that later. So usually in real time, we create private repositories. It is just that, okay? There is no difference. Public, private. So let me create a public repository. If you, in real time, you just select private, that's all. So how do you create a remote repository? Very simple, right? Click on new, give the repository name, something like this, okay? Give some description, okay? So I'll give something like that, edutech platform, something like that. Select public, and then just say create. Your repository is created. And this is the URL of your repository. This is the URL. Now you see how simple it is, to create a remote repository. I said GitHub is an application, correct? I said GitHub is an application. So this is the application. This is the application. This is the application. So since it's the application, that means it's a software where you can, do a lot of Git related things very easily. For example, we just created remote repository very easily. If at all you have to create remote repository on your own, you may have to execute 10, 15 commands. How difficult it is to manage, Git. Since GitHub is an application, right? You can do a lot of things very easily using this graphical user interface. Okay, done. We just created a remote repository and it is empty. Shall we clone our repository now? We just created a remote repository. Shall we clone it now? So this is what you do, okay? You just create a remote repository like this. You send an email to all your team members saying remote repository creation is done. Now you can clone the code and then you can start pushing your code to the remote repository. Just send one email and all your development teams, other teams can clone the code. And you know how people, work on the code, right? First, they have to clone the code. First, they have to clone the repository, correct? And then they can do their work. Now, as an user, for example, Harry, let's see how Harry clones this repository. You see the URL now here? See the URL? I'm going to clone the remote repository as some user. Assume that I'm Harry. Okay. So Git is not installed in my machine. This is a new Ubuntu machine. You remember my Linux machine was not working for, before, right? So I've created it newly. So let me quickly install Git. Okay. Sudo apt get update. You must be having this Git installation already in your machines. Apt get install Git. Okay. Now I'm going to I'm going to clone the repository. Okay. I'm a user, I'm a developer. I want to work with my repository. So I'll just create a directory, something like this, like a source. You can clone anywhere. I want to clone here, okay? So how do you clone the Git repository? Can somebody give me the command? How do you clone remote repository?
Git clone and the URL.
Git clone and then URL. Git clone, then URL, right? So this is the URL. You know the URL, right? This is the URL. It's very simple. You can try to remember the URL now. Git clone is the command. Okay. This is the URL, https:// where we have the remote repository, github.com/ your username. You would have given some username, right? This is your username. And then comes repository name, faculty71.git. Remember, repositories always end with .git. Now, you can very easily remember the URLs now. So when you join in the project, somebody will give you this repository URL, and then you know how to clone and then do your work. Clone. You see this. It says, you appear to have cloned an empty repository. We know this, correct? This repository is empty. It's a new one, right? And then you know what happens, ls. So once you clone, it will create a directory matching your repository name, faculty71. So when you clone the repository, here you will get a directory called faculty71. Whatever repository name you have given, 71, same thing. And guess what will be there in that faculty71? ls-a. We know, right? There is something called .git, right? This is your local repository. You know this. There is source area, staging area. See, this is .git. This is source area. Whatever you see, apart from this .git, whatever you see, that's called the source area. Now, do you have any code in the source area? No, because it's an empty repository, right? We know this. So, for example, if you have login.java here, it will give you login.java here, login.java, login.java. Now, we don't have anything in the source area because there is no code in the remote repository. It's empty. So let's create a new file. I'm Harry now, okay? Probably I'm the first person, right, to write some code and then push to Git repository. So I'm creating a file called login.java. I'm just taking some example, okay? When you practice, you can create login.txt or any file, right? We're not learning Java here. Touch ls -a show all. So this is .git, and then I just created a file in the source area. Okay, so we do our work in source area, correct? So I just created a new file here, and you know how to commit and then push it to the remote repository, right? So now just run a command called git status. It will give you the status. It says untracked file, means this is a new file. Why it says, why it is calling it as untracked file? Because it's a new one, right? If it is already there in the GitHub, you see, who modified it, what time it is modified, why it is modified, you will see a lot of commits, commit IDs, all that history, right? So it's a new file, so it's not. I mean, it says untracked file. Red color means the file is in source area, remember. Okay, now we know how to commit it, right? Now from source, we have to move the file to staging area. Second step is what? Add the file to stage area. Stage area or staging area? Staging area using git add command. Git add file name. So now it's time to remember the commands, okay? You can note down. Git add, I've already shown this to you, right? Git add login.java. Git status, you know this. Green color means the file is in staging area. Now, from staging, you commit the file to the local repository. So first time we are committing, right? So for each and every modifications, for each and every commit, it will get a separate copy. Now, first copy you're getting, it will give a number to it. We know this. And then it will also store some information. Who modified it, what time it is modified, why it is modified. So it will also maintain some history. If I can modify this file, it will get a second copy, third copy, fourth copy, and so on. Correct? You know that. So let's commit it. If you want to commit the file, this is the command we use. Git status. It is in the green color means staging area. Now I'm committing it. Okay. So if you want to commit, use the command called git commit. Git commit and then file name. Remember, when you commit the file, you have to give the reason, right? Because it will take the name from your mission, right? Time from your mission, but it doesn't know the reason, right? Why you are modifying the file. So at the time of committing the file, you have to give the reason. We call it as a commit message -m. Message always goes in double quote. I'll say login module, right? Code goes here, something like that. That's how we commit the file. Enter. Now we see, first time when you commit, this is the error you get. It says author identity unknown. Please tell me who you are. It says unable to auto detect email address. So what happens is, first time when you are committing something into local repository, it will actually try to take your name from your mission. You would have given your name at the time of installation, right? Full name. It will try to take the name. It will try to take the timestamp from your mission. It will try to take the email also from your mission. It will try to take email also. So, but it is unable to construct the email. You got the point? What is my username? Who am I? My name is VBox user. What is my name? VBox user. See this? It is trying to connect the email ID with my name. And what is the name of this mission? Host name. This mission name is Ubuntu. Username is VBox. Mission name is Ubuntu. So it is taking username here and then mission name. But mission name doesn't have .com and email ID should have .com, correct? So it is unable to take the .com. Since there is no .com in the mission name, it says, I'm trying to take your name and then email ID from your mission, but I'm unable to construct it. If your host name was ubuntu.com, it would have taken it. It would have committed. So even it takes, mostly we want to configure our own email ID and then name, right? We don't want Git to take, the names from the mission. So I still have my code in the source, staging area, right? I'm trying to commit it. It says, I need username, email ID, right? So I'm unable to construct the email ID. So it says, okay, I'm unable to construct. You please provide who you are. So it says, you configure your username and then email ID. And it is giving you the hint also. It says, run below commands to set your account's default identity. Shall we configure our username and email ID with these commands? Understand this? So first time when you are committing something to local repository, it needs name, email ID, timestamp, and the reason. So if it doesn't find anyone, it will throw this error. So I'm going to configure the username first. This is the command. Very simple. Hello Git. Please configure. Git config is the command. Git clone command, Git config is the command using which you can set up the username. Git config. Hello Git. Please configure username, user.name. And then username in double quotes. This is my username. Clear? This is my username. And then here there is one option. Okay, you have to use an option called -- global. That's the option. Options start with the -- or single hyphen or double hyphen, right? -- global. Here global means use this name for all repositories. See, sometimes it is very rare, okay? Sometimes you may be working with multiple repositories. So for one repository, you want one user. For another repository, you may want another user. Or usually, we want to have one user for all repositories. So here I'm telling, no matter how many repositories I work with in this mission, use the same name for all repositories, global, all repositories. Done. I'm going to ask Git to configure my email ID. Hello Git, please configure, right? User.email. See the command? And email ID goes in double quotes. This is my email ID @vikilty.com. This is your official email ID. When you join in, you must be having some official email ID in your company, right? Give that. Again, hyphen over. Done. My username and email ID is set. And if you want to see the username and email ID, right? If you want to see your configurations, you can use a command called git config -list. What list will do? See, you forgot, for example, your username and an email ID that you configured. How can you check it? How can you double check it? -list will list all the configurations. See, this is the username, email ID I just configured. These are all the default configurations. Don't worry about them. So this is the one. So that's how you can configure your username. You can configure your email ID, right? That's how you can check all the configurations that you have. Okay. That's all. Now, shall we commit the file now? It is in the staging area. I'm committing it now. Okay. Let me use the same command so that you understand very easily. Git commit, and then I'm giving the commit message. It will take my name now. I've configured the email ID, and it needs the reason, right? So this is the reason I'm giving. So it has all the details now. Now commit should go through. Okay. Enter. Done. Commit is done. Now we run the git status command. Earlier it was showing that the file is in the staging area, green color. Now it is not in green color, right? So it says nothing to commit, working directory is clean, means nothing to commit, working directory clean. Nothing to commit means what? You don't have anything here, you don't have anything here. Anything in the source area, you don't have anything in the staging area. So nothing to commit. Whatever changes you made, all are committed. That means you don't have any pending changes in the source staging area. Everything is committed. That's all. Now you can check the history, right? How do you check the history? Git log. If you want to see how many times a file has been modified, or in other words, if you want to see the history of a file, use a command called git log. There is a first commit. Okay, we just did a first commit. So the moment you commit, there will be a separate copy for that, and then you can see the reason also, right? Now see the history now. If you want to see the history, this is the command we use, git log and then file name. See this, who modified it? It has taken my name, my email ID. Who modified it? What time it is modified? Why it is modified? See the reason, whatever reason I gave, has recorded it. And then it will give a number to identify that one, right? So here I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, but actually speaking, that number looks like this. We call it as commit ID, revision number or version number, or mostly we call it as commit ID. Each and every commit will have a number associated with it. We call it as commit ID. You want me to modify it again? Say, for example, I'll modify the same file again. I'm opening the file. Okay. Vim is not installed. You know, right? If something is not installed in the machine, go ahead and then install. Sudo apt get install Vim. Vim is the command line editor, right? If it is already there, that's okay. Otherwise, just go and then install. So you, whatever commands you need, you can install. So Vim, I'm opening the file now. Again, I'm a hurry, and then I want to write some code. Public static public class, okay, login, something like that. Some code I have written. Don't worry about the code. Git status, right? It is in the source area. I just modified the file. Okay. Now I'll add it to the stage. Git add login.java. See how easily you can work with the files as a DevOps engineer. Now green color, I'll commit it. Git commit -m. I'll just say, you know what you're doing in real time, right? You may be fixing a bug or you may be developing a feature. So just whatever you have done, just describe it in simple English. Added class definition, something like that, and then file name. Is it asking for the username and email ID again and again? No. Correct? No. Because first time, remember this, first time when you configure your username and then email ID, it will store the username and email ID in your machine. It will store it. So next time onwards, second time onwards, it will not ask the username and email ID again and again. Clear with that? Okay, now the question comes. Where Git stores username and email ID? It must be storing somewhere in this machine, right? Correct? Where Git stores username and email ID? Anybody know? Whenever you run that command, git config username, git config email ID, it stores those details in this particular file. The file name is git config. And where is this file? It is in your user home directory, /home/ your username. Okay. So first time when you run that git config command, it will automatically store the username and email ID here. See this? It is stored. So second time onwards, it is not asking you. Interview question. How do you configure the username? Git config -f global username name. Git config -f global user.email email ID. How do you list all the configurations? Git config -f list. Where Git stores username and email ID? Where Git stores? Just say user home. You understand? No, when I specifically say user home, right? Don't say /home/Harry. No, just say user home. People call this as a user home, right? So where Git stores all the configurations, user home .git config file. Okay. So now we have committed. We have done our second commit, correct? ls-a. ls-a. Okay. Now run the git status command. We don't have anything, right? Pending. We don't have anything in the source and the staging area. Now we have done the second commit, right? Let's see the history of this particular file. How many times this file is modified? 2 times. First time, probably Harry. Second time, assume that Sally modifies it. So it will show Sally's name. And this is the commit message. So second time when you commit, it will create one more copy here, second time, right? And then it will again store who modified it, what time it is modified, why it is modified, then it will give a number to it. For example, 2. This is the second commit. And then who, what time, why it is modified. Similarly, if somebody modifies this particular 100 times, you see 100 copies. That's how we call that as a versioning or revisioning. That means creating different copies for different users. See, that's how you track who is doing what, right, in real time. Now, you know how to clone the code, how to modify the file, and then how to commit the code to the local repository. And remember, these files, these changes are still in your laptop, correct? So we have taken a copy of the remote repository. This is the copy. We did something in our local laptop, right? Now, if you want to expose your work, if you want to publish your work to the other team members, you have to push the changes to the remote repository because other users take the code from the remote repository. All other users are connected to the remote repository. When you push, what happens? How many changes you have? 2, right? First one, second one. Here you created the file. Here you modified something. So now your changes are published to the remote repository. Once it is pushed to the remote repository, anybody in the world can take it. For example, other team member, Sally. Sally will clone the code. When Sally clones the code, you have 2 copies here, right? 1, 2. It will give you the latest, okay? This is 1, this is 1, this is 2, right? Sally will give you the latest one, login.java here. Sally again can modify, add to the stage, commit it, third copy it will create. When Sally pushes, you'll get third copy here. So that's how multiple users can clone the code and then push their code to the remote repositories. Shall we push our code to the remote repository now? Okay. If you want to push the code to the remote repository, we use a command called git push. It is asking for the username. Okay. Nagesh PKN, that's my username. You must be having some username, right? For your GitHub. And then password. Remember, this is your GitHub username. This is your GitHub username, your account username. Password is not GitHub password. No. This is I just logged in into github.com, right? Right. My username is Nagesh VKN, right? And here, this GitHub password will not work. GitHub password will not work. You have to generate the password. You have to generate the password. Now, I'm explaining password generation. Okay. Password or you call it token. Token or password. So again, I've given all the steps here. Okay. Where is the class notes? See, these are the steps using which you can create the remote repository. Okay. Here, I have given steps for creating the token or password. And here, I have given commands for setting up the username, email ID, --- list. And I've also given you the file. This is where Git stores all configurations. This is one topic, setting up your username and password. This is second topic, generating the token for your repository. This is another topic using which you can create the remote repository. Click this, click that, and all the stuff. Okay. So I've given all the steps here again. Just follow me. If you want to generate the password or token for your remote repository, you have to go here. See, in the remote repository, here we just created the remote repository in github.com, right? So we don't have any code here. See, we don't have any code. Since there is no code in our repository, it is showing some information. Okay. We have not pushed it, correct? We have not pushed the code to the remote repository. So we still have the code in local repository. So if you want to generate the token, top right, click on your user icon. Okay. I'm clicking on the user icon. Don't try to remember, okay? All the steps are in the notes. Go to settings. Then you have to go to developer settings here. Developer settings. Personal access tokens. Token classic. Here you have to click on generate new token. Generate new token. That means generate new password. Classic. Just give some name to remember the password, okay? DevOps class. You can have multiple passwords also for different things. You can set the expiry date also. I'll say 30 days expiry or no expiration. Click the first checkbox. Don't forget to click this. This will give you all permissions. That's all. Generate token. So this is your token. I'll copy this and then save it somewhere for future. Text editor. This is my password. Copy it. Paste. Okay. Now I have to save this file. Where is this? Well, is correct as Git. Just save it somewhere in your Linux. Copy. Now I'll paste this. So you know how to generate that password, right? It is pasted, okay? Since it's the password, it is not showing here. Just say enter. That's all. Now these two commits are pushed to remote repository. You want to see that? Go to your remote repository again. Our remote repository is Viculty71, right? Left side. Click on that. See, we have login.java. Earlier it was not showing anything. Now you can see login.java. It's you see here two commits. Click on that. The first commit, this is the second commit. Click on second commit, for example. You can also see the difference. Earlier there was nothing. Now, if you see the right side, there is some code, right? That means this is the previous commit, empty file, and here green color. That means in second one you have added something. See, you can also see the difference. You can see how many times a file is modified and things like that. This is application. GitHub is an application. So because of all these advantages, people don't usually create their own repository. Instead, people go to GitHub. If you go to GitLab, probably you know that in the browser options are different. Bitbucket options are different, right? But if you work on one, application like GitHub, working with other applications is very easy. So you are able to successfully create a file, modify it 2 times. You are able to successfully publish your changes to the other team members in your project. Let's verify it once, okay? Whether the changes are in the remote repository or not. So assume that I'm a new user. I don't have anything, okay? I'm removing the repository from my laptop, okay? Assume that I'm a new user. I don't have anything. So I'm Sally now, for example, okay? So how Sally, works, if Sally wants to work, on the same project, how Sally works? Git clone, same thing, right? Viculty71, for example, ls-a, right? See, login.java is already there, right? When Sally clones, it will show login.java, and it has 2 copies, git log login.java, and it is giving me the latest. This is the latest one, okay? This one. Now, Sally also wants to work on something. Let me change, username quickly, just want to show you a few things, okay? Git config, for example, hyphen global, right? Assume that this is Sally's mission, okay? User dot name Sally, okay? Git config hyphen global user dot name Sally, correct? User dot email, okay? Sally at viculty.com. Now Sally is the user. Assume that I'm Sally, okay? So Sally is modifying the file. Sally wants to improve something, okay? Public static. Don't worry about the code, okay? When you practice, just type blah, 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 something like this. Static void main, something like this, okay? I'm Sally. Git status, head color, I know changes in the source area, git add, git commit, add main method. Sally know what she modified. Don't forget hyphen m, okay? M for message. Then git status. It says you have one extra commit. It is a local repository. Sally is pushing to remote repository. Okay. This is the password, for example, Sally's password, something like that. Now, see the history of this particular file now. Git log file name. commits. First two are modified by Nageshwar Rao, and the third copy is modified by Sally. We just modified the username, right? So usually we will be always working with our user ID. I just wanted to have a different name here, so I just configured a different name, okay? So that's how anybody can clone, modify, commit, and then push the code to the remote repository. As a DevOps engineer, every day almost or very frequently, we will be modifying our automation scripts, automation code. So you should know how to work with your files. Understand this? Any questions you have about creating the repository, generating the password, setting up the username and password, setting up the username and email ID? Any questions about these three topics? 1, 2, 3. Any questions?
Sir, can you just show me once again that creating username, user ID,
Creating,
user ID? Uh,
setting up the user ID.
yes, yes.
Okay. I'm just setting up the new user ID. Okay. This is the command git config. Remember, if you want to configure the username email ID, what the command is? Git config. Simple. Remember it? Now, git config. Then user.name for username. Give the username. I'm again giving my name now. Okay. And I want to use the same username for all remote repositories. So I give -n global. Clear with that?
Sir, all remote repository means like.
That's very rare. Okay. Say for example, you have two repositories. That means your project code is in two repositories. This is you. Okay. Some of your project code is in one repository and other code is in another repository. So you clone this repository in one place, in one directory. You clone other repository in other folder. And then here also you'll get local repository source stage, right? So few things you modify and then commit and then push to this repository, few things to this repository. So here for those repositories, for both repositories, I want to use the same name. So -n global. Very rare it is. Usually we'll be having complete project code in one repository. Question on that? Any follow-up question?
No, sir. Okay, sir.
Again, I'm changing it. Okay. Git config -n list. So this is my name and then user ID. Any other questions, guys, so far? Not hearing many questions. Are you following?
Also, once again, can you just show me the token that you created, the password?
Okay, I'll show it to you, but just for your information again, okay? So all the steps are here. Go to github.com, click this, click that. I have given all the steps here. But I'll show you. If you follow that notes one of 2-3 times, you'll be able to remember. Don't worry. Click on this top right. Go to settings. Go to developer settings. Click on tokens, classic. Again, see, I already have one, okay? I want to create a new one. So delete this existing one. I'm creating a new one, okay? Create token, classic, 30 days repository. You can give some name if you want to remember or don't give anything. Check the first option, generate token. You have to give the name, okay? DevOps class. Generate token. This is the token. New password. Okay, Rajat?
Sir, one small question, sir.
Yeah.
Like this token or the password is only for one repository or whatever repository will be there with that particular GitHub, all repositories?
All repositories that you have in your account. That means I have gamut card 71, 63, 61. I create the same.
All having same password.
Yeah.
Is it possible to make it different password for each and every repository?
No. In that case, you can get two accounts. One username for one repository, other username for another repository. That is how you can do it. But otherwise, if it is the same username, same password, it will give you. Understand, right? So when you want to work with this repository, use one username, Nagesh Weekend, for example. When you want to work with another repository, use some other email ID. So that's how you can. But otherwise, if the user ID is same, then you cannot have two tokens for different repositories. As far as I know, quickly.
Oh,
Got it.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? Go ahead. It's time to start practice now, okay? So from today onwards, whatever I'm doing in the class room, right? You have to keep the notes, everything is captured in the notes, keep the notes in front of you, and then practice 2-3 times, same thing. That's how you remember. If you don't practice, then over the period, what will happen? You'll, forget the things, and you feel that you will understand the theory, but when it comes to practice, you will not be able to do, because you're not clearing the things day by day. So that is the problem you may face. So start practice from today on. Okay.
Sir, is this GitHub? Is it only possible to access from this command line interface, or any other way we can access?
There are some GUI tools also. Like there is something called Smart Gate, Tata is Gate and things like that. But that is for the developers, not for DevOps. So as a DevOps engineer, we automate a lot of things, right? So we should know the commands. So don't ever use the GUI tools. There are some GUI tools also.
We only save only commands and files, those kind of stuffs, or other like any pictures and all.
Come again, Rajat.
Like only it was used for saving codings or files, developer files, those kind of stuff, or any other documents like images, videos.
Okay. You're asking, can we store images, videos in GitHub or in any Git repository?
Yes, yes.
No. So Git is only to store text files. Like .java is a text file, right? You can see the text, right? MP4, video files, audio files, those are all binary files, right? So GitHub is not for the binary. It is only for the text. If you want, you can store, you can, git add, git commit, git push, but you cannot, edit those binary files, right? So many people, two people cannot edit the binary file at the same time. So that is the reason there is no use in storing, binary file in Git repository. So Git repository is not for the binary files. Any follow-up question on that?
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any reason for asking that question, Rajat? That was a good question.
Actually,
Did you read somewhere, or know that Git is not for the binary files?
no, no, no. Simply, I just ask. Previously, I worked some tools. Somewhere I relate this stuff, so I just ask.
Okay, okay. You cannot store, binary files like MP4, PDF, video files in Git. You can store, but there's no use.
Okay.
Many
Actually,
people
that's the reason I just asked in the beginning. Like, is it possible to like use any different tool to pull out without this command line?
without command line, you can pull the code. You can pull the code. You can pull anything. Okay, let me clarify that for everybody. See, guys, now I am cloning the code, right, by typing command, correct? Git clone, right? URL. So that means I'm working with a command line, correct? There are some GUI tools. GUI tools means you install some tool, something like this, for example. Okay, not in the browser. There will be a tool. Okay, you just right click and then you can say there will be an option clone repository. If you click on that option, it will ask you to enter the URL and then just say submit. It will code. You can modify the code here itself, right? For example, right? And once your modification is done, it will show you git add. It will show you one command called add. Just click on that add. It will add the file. There will be one more option here, commit. If you click on that commit, it will commit the code. There will be one more option to push. If you click on push with the mouse button, it will push the code. So there are some tools for that. But those tools are not for DevOps engineers. We should be very strong in commands. Probably those tools are for developers because developers need not be expertise in Git, right? That is not their job. Their job is development. Tester job is testing. DevOps engineer's job is automating Git related workflows. So if you want to automate, we should know the commands, correct? So that is the reason I suggest you not to install those tools. And then, because if you have that tool installation, right, you're forced to, sometimes you'll be forced to use that. So don't at all even don't even try those tools. If you want to see, just you can download, for example, Git GUI tools, GUI clients. See how many are there for Linux. Let's see, Git Kraken, MA Git, Smart Git, ME Git. There are a lot of things. You can install any one of this, but
The demerit will be like it not have any local repository. Directly it was used in that GitHub stuff and save and
see, we are exploring the code using this command, right? If you use that tool, you just give the URL. It will also clone the code, but without you typing the command, without you remembering the command. So there you are graphically working. It will do the same job like what commands do.
yes.
Okay.
Uh,
In my
Nagesh,
last
where can I access the
10
notes?
years, in my last 10 years of experience, I have never heard people asking questions on GUI tools, Git GUI tools. No, nobody uses that. Leave it. Question: if anybody had not understood the meaning of the GUI tool and things like that, just don't worry about that. Leave it. Question, but I'm okay for the questions. I'm okay to take the questions. Ritesh, go ahead.
Nagesh, where can I access the notes? I don't see it on the portal.
You don't have the notes?
I am not seeing the notes. So is it
GitHub.
saved on the website?
I'm showing. I'm giving the URL. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody has the notes URL? Did I not send the URL? URL? The class notes? No?
No, we don't have.
Okay, I thought I already sent it. Okay, this is the class notes. Okay. I'm sharing you in the Zoom chat. Copy, save that URL, everybody. You all can see the URL. Can you see the URL in Zoom chat? Prince, Rajat, Ritesh, Shivkumar, Triveni.
Yeah.
Can you see the,
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
okay. Just click on that link. 1 second. So if you click on the link, you will land here. You all see the space? Okay.
Yeah.
Click on this code, okay? Click on this code, green color box, green color one. Just set download zip. There's your option here. Download zip. Click on that. So you will see the zip file downloaded. Go there. Go to downloads. This is the zip file, right? Just extract it. And then you have the Git nodes here, Maven nodes, Docker nodes, Jenkins nodes, and so on. So this is the Git nodes. Click on that. So this is the nodes I'm using. Git class nodes. Everything is here. Clear with that, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks,
Sir,
Prashant.
is that the same URL for the repository only, right? The URL
for-
that
For all tools, that's the same URL. Everything is there.
like if I create a new repository, okay, and if I use that same URL in the directly browser, it was look like the same interface that you are getting. If I have any file saved or something.
Yeah, see, now you know how to create the remote repository. Right? You can also create your own repository and you can push anything there. This is my repository, which I created just now. And there is a login.java here. So you can push anything.
So if you there is an URL for this, right? So if you access this URL directly in the browser, what outcome it will give? Not this URL, the URL that you get in the beginning when you create that. Is that the same one?
Same thing comes. So for example, see if I use this repository URL, right? You can see everything, here itself. Git class nodes. You can open everything here itself. Because GitHub is an application, I told you, right? So actually that nodes is I kept that nodes in the repository. And you can access the repository. You can see all repository content in the browser itself, right? So that's how it is working. So you can access that if you paste that repository URL, right? You can see everything in the browser itself. So I've created one repository called DevOps class nodes, and then I kept all the files there. But there's one down since many people don't know cloning and all the stuff, not very clear, right? So I am asking you to download the zip. Rajat, question?
Yes, yes, sir. Sorry, I'm just talking in it.
Clear with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when this is for everybody, okay? When you ask the questions, if the question is not clear, you have to tell that this is not clear, or I need more information, or I have a follow-up question on this. Okay. So you have that freedom. You can ask me any number of questions. That's my job. So feel free to ask questions until you understand the things. Okay. So that's all for today. Okay. So tomorrow I'll explain what is this staging. See, we are just blindly adding the file to the staging area, right? So you may be having the question, why I have to add the file to the stage? Why cannot I directly commit the file to the local repository? What is the use of staging? I'll explain that tomorrow. And I also explain that, the commit ID. There is a commit ID, right? Git login.java. So what is this commit ID? I'll explain. And then, okay. Then there are some commands. Okay. There are a lot of other commands, git log, and there are some commands. I'll explain the other git management commands. And here starts actual git. Okay. That means the DevOps related git starts from here. Whatever commands you are learning so far will be used by everybody, right? Correct. So that means developer or you, me, or anybody, uses the same command: clone, add, commit, push. One second. So all this git clone, add, commit, push commands, are used by anybody, right? Developers, you, me, because we're all, we all work with the files, right? But there are few tasks which, will be done by only DevOps engineers. So that starts from here. Okay, that's all for today. Any questions you have for me? Thank you. Good night. And practice whatever we discussed in today's class and ask me the questions in tomorrow's class.